and I'm honored to introduce our speaker today, Professor Ruth Dassonneville, who began a new position just this month at KU Leuven in Belgium. Ruth is a professor of political science, and among her many contributions, she is the editor of the British Journal of Political Science, which is one of the leading journals in the field. Today, she'll present an article about the gender gap in voter turnout. This article was published in the British Journal of Political Science and is co-authored with Professor Philip Kostelka of the European University Institute in Italy.
As you already saw in this graph, over time, 90s, 2000s, that gap seems to be a lot smaller. And so there were a number of scholars that observed this trend and then concluded based on that, well, those gender differences had diminished. What is more, there's even meta-analysis that was published in 2013 by Kat Smets and Caroline van Ham that pointed out that if they were analyzing, they were looking at all the literature on the topic that was trying to explain, to predict voter turnout, they found that there was basically zero effect overall. In the aggregate, there was hardly any differences between men and women in the reported likelihood to turn out to vote. And they added that in these few studies that did find a significant difference between men and women, it was actually reversed. So they were observing either no difference, no gender gap at all, or a reversed one, whereby women would turn out to vote more than men. And that observation to us seemed really surprising. So as I indicated, we do this in 2 steps. We start off by first looking at the gender gap in voter turnout, looking at this over time, and then in the second step, we'll focus more on gender differences in political interest and try to explain those. Starting off with the gender gap in voter turnout, our expectation was that there would be a gender gap in voter turnout for European Parliament elections because it's second-order elections. And that is indeed what we find. So you see all European Parliament elections that were included in our study. And for each election, there's 2 coefficients that are shown. The black coefficients focus only on those countries that were already a member state of the European Union in 1979. So by comparing the black circles, you're looking at it's consistently the same countries that we're looking at. And what we see for all of those countries is that systematically women are less likely to report to have voted in the European Parliament election compared to men. Then obviously the question is then why are women in some settings less interested in politics than men? So here we shift the outcome variable and now focus on political interest and try to explain variation between countries in that gender gap in political interest. So technically, we're looking at cross-level interactions where we're interacting some context-level variable with gender to predict political interest. And so we want to know if the effect of being female on political interest varies by some societal level, things like how many women are present in parliament and how is the society doing in terms of gender inequality, and then our indicator of cultural gender inequalities.